That's the real reason I think she's going to win, is that most Americans already agree with her on the issues that they care about the most, that affect them the most, whether we're talking about choice and her stance on defending a woman's right to choose versus Donald Trump, who eliminated a right to choose in this country.
Well, he sent it back to the states, to be fair.
Let's be very clear. He is proud of the fact that he demolished the national right to choose in this country, period.
That's potential Kamala Harris VP pick and part-time Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg telling Fox News that despite being wildly unpopular in 2020 and winning less votes than he did, people love Kamala Harris and agree with her stance on all the radical positions the media has been trying to bury for the past week. Welcome to Nerk News, I'm Nerkish, and you can tell Democrats are starting to lose momentum after the announcement of Biden dropping out because they've all been circulating clips of this interview and saying that Buttigieg destroyed Republican narratives. Let's check it out and see if they're right.
You actually have gotten more delegates, though, than she has. I mean, when you ran back in 2020, you accrued them. She didn't get any delegates. She dropped out of that race. Former staffer of hers says she worries about this coronation. She wrote about it in The Atlantic, saying she wasn't tested and tried. Are you worried about that? Because Bret Stephens also says this. He says she's unpopular. She's been a bad campaigner. She's been a bad manager. She's a blue state Dem who's got to win purple states. She's anchored to the president's record. He worries that, well, maybe Democrats should be more worried that there hasn't been a thorough vetting. So when she gets into this head-to-head with President Trump, there will be wishes that she had been vetted.
The idea that somebody hasn't been tested or vetted when they have been Vice President of the United States for nearly 4 years just doesn't make any sense. She is in obviously one of the most visible leadership roles in the country, and she's demonstrated both her effectiveness in that job and a vision for the country that Americans agree with. And
gee, that's a really interesting spin there. But the actual reality of what happened was Kamala Harris was a wildly unpopular candidate in 2020. Democrats were not on board with her far-left AOC-style woke agenda. Instead, they chose a guy who was familiar and appeared moderate at the time, who she called racist, by the way. And that guy said he selected her on the basis of his commitment to DEI initiatives because she was a black woman. Then she proceeded to do absolutely nothing but give inane speeches where she talks in circles for nearly 4 years. Her vetting wasn't based on her competence or popularity because that's not why she was offered the position in the first place.
Support. This is how Washington Post.
What happened.
This is how they describe the border situation. Illegal border crossing soared in the months after Biden took office and immediately rolled back many Trump-era restrictions. They go on to say the number of people taken into custody by the U.S. Border Patrol has reached the highest levels in the agency's 100-year history under Biden, averaging 2 million per year. And there's a lot of that attributed to the fact that there were dozens of things done under the Trump administration that this administration rolled back. And Vice President Harris is part of this administration and had a leading role, according to mainstream media, on handling the border.
Let's get real. Border crossings are down in the wake of President Biden's executive actions that he took after Congress failed to act.
So he could have taken action.
He wanted Congress to resolve that because that would have been more durable. But when Trump came in, talked Republicans out of their own bipartisan project because he didn't want the issue to get better. Remember, the worse things are at the border, the better things get for Donald Trump. So he has a vested interest in it remaining chaotic down there. I think this also helps to explain why he didn't exactly conclusively solve it when it was his turn. But I saw something else really important happening at the Republican National Convention on the border and the talk about immigration, which we all recognize is a problem, which is they tried to paint this narrative that if you live somewhere far from the border and immigration hasn't affected you personally, you need to think that immigration is a driver of crime. That was the real message. Immigration leads to crime.
Well, there are blue state governors and mayors who say every state is a border state now. That's Democrats.
Yeah, and now they're saying, but
ignore for a moment the stupidity of what he's saying, because we'll get into how the crime stats he's about to reference are just estimates based on a load of crap. Just distill his argument down for a second. He's saying that Republicans are pushing a hateful narrative that people who are coming here illegally, which is a crime by the way, are creating a rise in crime. As if it would be a stretch of the imagination to say that a group of people whose first act upon entering the country is to show a flagrant disrespect for our system of law would somehow be responsible for committing future crimes.
Well, the false message of the RNC was that this is leading to an increase in crime.
Well,
and I think it's really important that we talk about crime.
Have been very high profile about people. If they had not been in this country illegally,
this is my
people
point,
would still
right?
be alive.
Trying to make people think that crime is up when crime is down under Joe Biden and crime was up under Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how often that gets reported on this network, so if you're watching this at home, do yourself a favor and look up the data.
Well, we invite that.
Great. So if you look this up at home, you will know that crime went down under Biden and crime went up under Trump, and I think the violent crime for sure. So I think the really important thing to ask is, why would America want to go back to the higher crime that we experienced under Donald Trump?
Okay, but they also may want to ask why they'd want to go to millions fewer people coming illegal across the border, and every single person who's here and was involved with a crime, that's a life that didn't have to be lost. And I think that's the argument being made.
Now, I'm sure many of you already know this, and it's a little telling Fox News didn't call him out on this, but those crime stats are unreliable at best and deceptive at worst. They're all based on estimates because places like New York, Chicago, and LA stopped submitting crime data after the failed rollout of the Fed's National Incident-Based Reporting System. Now, combine that with the new soft on crime reality created in the wake of the BLM riots, where law isn't being enforced, criminals are being released, and prosecutors are refusing to deal with the ones that are left, and you get the numbers Buttigieg is bragging about. But let me know what you think. Did Pete Buttigieg destroy that Fox News reporter? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That stuff really does help us out. Until then, this has been Nerk News. Thanks for watching. Bye!